Damn, son, where'd you find this?
People don't be offended by the truth. They be offended because you called out the truth. Simple as that. They don't want to hear any other narrative that makes them look bad.
One thing I can't stand at this big grown age is somebody who act like cause and effect does not exist. Like, yes, your actions caused this outcome. Yes, what you did lit the match. Like, why are you surprised and playing victim?
Guys, Chico, they never lied.
That's how you know somebody doesn't respect you. They listen to reply, not to be understood. They cut you off. They minimize what actually matters to you. They laugh at your boundaries, and then they call you sensitive when you try to hold the line. They show up late. They cancel last minute, forget the things you've told them, because in their world, your time, your energy, even your voice aren't a priority. They're just an option. You see, there are two kinds of people. Those who adjust when they realize they've actually hurt you, and those who expect you to adjust so they don't have to change. You don't need to be disrespected loudly to be disrespected deeply. Sometimes you'll see it. It's just in their tone, in their patterns, in the silence after you're known. Respect isn't what they say when they're watching. It's how they act when they think you'll tolerate it.
Yo, 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 yo. What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Peace and blessings, man. Happy Friday. What's the word? I hope all is well with the good people. It's good to be here amongst the land of the living one more day. This brisk November. Shout outs to my poets, my writers, my content creators. Shout outs to Mr. Arcana. I just gave bro a wrench. I don't know if it popped up yet or not, but I got another one I got to give out. Matter of fact, I got two more I got to give out here. For sure. But I got the crew in the building. I got Coach in the building. I got Sid in the building. You see the title. Let me bring everybody up to the big screen real quick. Hold up. Yo.
Hello, good to see you guys.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Awesome.
Simpatico.
You want to say hi too? Hi. You want to say hi?
Hey.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey.
You asked her, how are you doing? And she was like, good. How are you doing?
It's good to be
What's
here,
up?
man.
How's everybody's Friday?
Mom.
Good, bro. Good. I'm in good spirits. Just happy to be here, man. To have another dope conversation. Shout out to Chinchilla for yesterday, by the way. Let me just throw that out there. That was a dope stream, man. out to her.
Yeah, she smoked that.
Yeah. You see the title? I'm gonna bring that up on a big screen here in a second. It's a clip with a guy having a conversation with his son.
Let's go watch something.
And I'm not really familiar with vapes. I know people who smoke them, but I never got into any of that stuff. Like I left all that alone like years ago, but he's having a conversation with him, and then it ended up leading to some other things that kind of disturbed me. So I want to bring this up on the screen. Greg, salutes to you, sir. I'm gonna let it run, and we're gonna go around.
Okay, sound like we got a buzz feed going.
Yeah, I think that's. Hold on. I muted you real quick. See, like there's like this little weird little thingy. I'm gonna play this clip though. It's not that long, and we'll take the rotation.
The weed, I'm not so much worried about. These right here, sit up. Sit up. Look at me. This I'm not worried about. These I am. And do you know why? You want to take a guess? No, something like that, right? What kind of chemicals you think I'm talking about? You know what fentanyl is? Yeah. You can't go legally buy one of these, correct? You can't go into a smoke shop. You can't go buy one, right? So you have to get it from the streets, correct? What do you think they're putting in these nowadays? Besides chemicals, it's one key drug I want you to name, because I've worked some cases with this drug in the vapes, regular vapes, even these, huh? Fentanyl.
Investigates fentanyl-laced vape pens. Some of the liquid in the cartridges you can buy to fill up your vape could actually have a deadly drug inside of that.
And as we know, vaping is really popular with young adults. Fox 35's Valerie Boy hears from a woman whose son fell into a coma after vaping.
Smoke shop owners are on alert and looking for answers after hearing about a warning regarding black market vaping products that could be laced with illicit vaping pods. Investigators say a Georgia teenager was hospitalized after vaping from a tainted product. Our affiliate Fox 5 in Atlanta talked to his mother.
That's when I called 911, and that's when they found the vape inside of his underwear.
Linda Amos says her 13-year-old son Zachary had a stroke and ended up in a coma after he was pressured to use a fentanyl-laced vape.
We went from weed to ecstasy pills. You got heroin, you got speed. There's stuff out there that I don't even know about right now. That's how far removed from the whole industry I am. These kids got their hands on a lot of different things right now. What's your initial thoughts on the video, the conversation between dad and the son, and the clip that followed? Sid, what you got?
I did research on this beforehand when I saw what the topic was, because this is definitely a problem. One of the sad things is a lot of people don't know that their products can be laced with that. Like, they're not buying it with the specific purpose to get fentanyl. It's put into the products because it's cheaper than a lot of the real deal drugs. And so the dealers will cut things with fentanyl because it increases the potency without having to having to use the more expensive drugs. And so, unfortunately, a lot of these cases are kids or even adults that have no idea what they're buying. They think they're buying a normal product, but they're not. And one of the other things too is teenagers, because they're not of legal age yet, they're more likely to be buying counterfeit products because they're not going to be able to go into a dispensary and buy from a legitimate seller of a vape pen or vape products. And so they're more likely to get it from some back end dealing, like, oh, my friend's cousin's nephew's blah, 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 got it from this guy on the street. And so they're less likely to be getting legitimate products. So I think that's one of the things that is a component to this is it's, of course, the fact that fentanyl is now being used at a much higher rate to lace products across the board. It's being included with everything from opiates to meth to cocaine to marijuana, everything, and now vapes. But then it's also the where the sellers are coming from, or where the sellers are getting it from. So I'm glad I imagine that was a real conversation between a dad and his son, and this is something that I think parents should be doing with their kids, even if their kids are not showing that they're using drugs or have an interest in this. They should talk to their kids and let them know, like, look, it might be fun to try and experiment with these things. Your friends might try and pressure you to do these things, but there could be other things in it that are not what you think it is. And I think we saw with that last story, he was 13. Kids are getting introduced to this younger and younger. So we really, if you have kids, and even if like you're an uncle or a grandfather, like have those conversations with the kids in your lives so they know what is at stake when experimenting with new substances.
Yeah, those are all great points. I think for me, I guess I'll kind of approach it a different way. Is that you just hope that the education piece is happening a little sooner versus being you're hoping they're being more proactive versus reactive. And if it's not something that's being talked about other than in home, because it takes repetition. So it's something that has to kind of be talked about in school. It has to be talked about, it has to be a better marketing campaign on television. I can just think back to growing up, on a Saturday morning, you're watching cartoons and a commercial would come on, it'd be eggs frying in a pan. And then it would all say, this is your brain on drugs, right? Something along that lines. It would be a campaign, somewhat educating us, and the marketing behind it, because you think about it, the strategic thinking and marketing plan that went behind it. It caught you in the morning. It related to breakfast, frying eggs, saying that's your brain on drugs. It's so much psychology that went behind that campaign. I don't see those type of things happening today. And then today, things are a lot more accessible. So I think it's definitely something that needs to be more proactive versus reactive. And it needs to be a community of people that are also like-minded and trying to campaign against these drugs or vapes or whatever the case it may be.
When I used to smoke weed, the only thing that I was worried about was them putting embalming fluid in it. That's what you were worried about. They called it boat. Oh, on this side, I don't know about anywhere else. You didn't want that in there. And then at some point they migrated to lacing it with cocaine and all this other stuff. I always said I would never go anywhere beyond marijuana because I knew that was going to be a gateway. Because once you start here and you get bored with that high, you're going to need something to sustain it longer. And that's where you start experimenting with other stuff. This particular discussion with the father and son, it felt responsible, but I also wanted to add that I'm not sure I'd be actually encouraging it. I mean, I guess from his perspective, it's like, well, you're probably going to do it anyway. So just like they would say, you're going to have sex anyway, or you're going to go out here and be mischievous regardless if I am on your helmet 24 hours a day. So I might as well just lay some ground rules and talk to you about it. I'm not going to encourage you to smoke, and I'm gonna still try to get you not to actually want to smoke. But the thing is, I'm not mad at his approach. I'm not. It's just weird hearing a parent or an adult giving you the okay to smoke in general, because to me, none of it is good for you, period. I mean, sure, it seemed like you're having a good time and it takes some of the stress off you, but as somebody who's been down that road before, it's deeper than that. The whole fentanyl thing with the 13-year-old, that's scary because that could be anybody. It really could.
Yeah, no, I agree, right? That could be anybody. And just to because I was thinking about that earlier, and so it's kind of taboo to say that. So traveling abroad, you go to places like Europe, and they're smoking cigarettes. Not saying vaping, but well, now today, vaping is equivalent to cigarettes. But they're doing those things at the age of 13 or 14 years old. If they're tall enough to look over the bar, they're drinking, right? So I think if you can't take it away, perhaps you can provide a responsible way to partake in some of those activities. Maybe with today's day and age, with everything being so accessible online, you can order stuff from anywhere on the planet and have it shipped to your home. You can maybe provide a guide to say, hey, look, if you're going to partake in these activities, these are some things you should look for. I don't condone you doing these things, but at least be responsible about it. And that's kind of how it was back in the days when they started talking to you about the birds and the bees. It might have started at 16, 15, 14, 13, and 12 each year. And as generations move forward, people get more, they get a little bit more bounce in them, and they start to try things at an early age. So it might just be, a different approach. And I think you can't, times have changed. Kids have changed. They aren't the same as we was. We weren't the same as our parents were. So I think, as times are evolving, you got to figure out a way to get with the times and kind of meet these kids where they're at versus trying to get them to meet you where you are, or some old, outdated traditional beliefs, just to add a different spice to it.
And also, parents can't have. I know a lot of parents want to use fear to kind of, oh, if I scare them, if I tell them enough stories, then they'll be scared out of doing XYZ. But one, from being a teenager myself, and also just from knowing the psychology of how young brains work, fear mongering never works. And if anything, it can actually cause more rebelliousness, because the child will then want to prove their parents wrong and be like, see, I was fine. Like my friends would never blah, 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 blah. And they'll always try and come up with excuses to negate and debate what their parents are saying. And I think each parent does have to approach their child in a way that they know that their child will kind of respond to, because every child is going to be different. And also, I think there is more of a gendered approach as well, where you kind of have to approach girls differently than you approach young boys, because partially boys are more susceptible to action-based peer pressure, where women are generally less likely to try substances because of their peers, even though with the proliferation of drugs and their availability, it is starting to even out more, where it's not as much of a gender difference. But you will have to kind of cater your discussion with your child to their personalities, what matters to them, because a lot of parents will use that fear-based approach, and it's been shown time and time again that it usually backfires. It does not work out, and oftentimes by instilling more fear into the kid, it makes them less likely to come forward and come to the parent if they do mess up and do something wrong. And that can be very problematic, especially if it's the case where they're taking a drug that's dangerous. There was a case that I heard of I think it happened a couple months ago. It might have been last year. It was I think he was either 12 or 13. And he was taking, I think it was a vape. It was either a vape or it was like a pre-roll, but it had fentanyl in it. And he was hiding it from his mother because he didn't want to admit to her, even though she knew that he was smoking marijuana. He didn't want to admit to her that he was doing other things like the vaping. And he ended up dying in his sleep because of that, what he used. And because she didn't know about it, she didn't basically check on him until it was too late. And that's just one of many examples. That's not an isolated incident. This happens a lot, where kids are basically found, they hide in their rooms, they take this, and then when their parents check on them, they're either in a state that requires calling 911 or they've already passed. So parents need to be very upfront with them in a way that's more informational rather than fear-based, because the kids need to feel like their parents are still an ally to them, that they're not the police, which it can be a very hard line to balance. Like, obviously you don't want to be a permissive parent and just like, yeah, do whatever you want, and I won't give you any repercussions. But parents need to let their kids know that they should not be taking those drugs. But if they're in a situation where they are taking those drugs and are having an adverse reaction, they should know that their parents are there to protect them and are not going to punish them when they're in that state. And so they shouldn't be afraid to come forward to their parents to let them know they're experiencing that type of reaction. And I think fear is something that could prevent some of the deaths, because in the case of fentanyl, it's difficult because the effects cause comatose-like symptoms almost immediately. But with other forms of drugs, it can be beneficial for a child to feel like they can come to their parent if they've accidentally been exposed or have been exposed on purpose to those types of substances. So that's all to say, like, don't use fear-based approaches when discussing these things with your kid. You have to be very upfront, forward, give them the right information without making it all anecdotal, like, well, this person, I knew this person and this happened to them. Because a lot of kids are just going to brush that off and they're going to be like, oh, yeah, that's not going to happen to me. But I think kids are smart enough now that if you present them with the facts and let them know why it's so dangerous without all the flowery language. I think they would probably be more receptive to it. And again, reiterate that you're there to protect them and they should not be afraid to come to you, even if their kid is doing something wrong.
When I was in school, we had sex education. You had the videos. You had the videos about what your lungs look like after you smoked after a while. You had videos with adults with holes in their neck, and they had the machine that they would talk through. They were very graphic videos back then.
And voice box.
Yeah, exactly. That right there alone made me never want to be unprotected with anything, because you see how them bumps and stuff formulate on people's body parts, and it's like, yeah, I'm good. Like, you could talk to me all day about this stuff, but I need visuals. I'm a visual person, right? And Coach, you said this earlier, they don't have those commercials anymore. I used to see them up until maybe a couple years ago. I don't know what commercials look like anymore because I haven't watched regular TV in years, where they had those "This is your brain on drugs" commercials, and you had those anti-smoking teenager commercials. I don't know if they still have those, but what I do notice is how much they advocate for you to utilize these devices. Somebody that I used to work with actually would smoke the vapes at the job, not in the building per se, but outside of the building, just so casually. It's like, well, this ain't really a cigarette, it's just mist, so it can't really do no harm to you. And that message that you're putting out to the people is like, okay, this is harmless, but we know it really isn't harmless. It gives the impression that you can be anywhere and around anyone with this, and everything is going to be fine, which leads people to believe that there's no limitations on who can partake of this. So if it's harmless to an adult, if it's harmless to a teenager, then who else is going to be susceptible to saying, oh, all right, well, if everybody else can do it and nothing happened to them, then I guess I can do it too. But we're seeing that you have people out here that are very malicious. They have cruel intentions as adults. Either they're trying to market off of it, or they're doing things in nefarious ways to harm you through these substances. So I agree, scare tactics don't work. You know, I was hard-headed and stubborn. I needed to see what happened. I needed to experience it for myself. But also, I know if I'm gonna have these type of conversations with a teenager or my child per se, it's going to be as authentic as possible. I'm not going to talk to them like we're on the street, but I'm going to talk to them like I'm on the street. Like, you're going to get everything but the curse words. It's going to be raw. It's going to be unfiltered, but it's going to have exactly what is necessary for you to get the full scope without me having to pull up diagrams and a chalkboard and say, well, look here, and studies showed. I'm not going to do all that. That's not necessary. I went to school. You don't reach, especially right now in 2025, you're not going to connect with your class just pulling up graphs and telling them to turn to page 255. I yield the mic.
Yeah, I think it's too much focus on the parents. I think you may be giving the parents a little too much credit, especially in 2025. As a parent, you're competing with social media. You're competing with every platform that's out there and every individual that's going through their own experiences. And I see experience is the best teacher in the chat, but experience goes both ways, positive experience and negative experience. So you might be talking about something positive, but you counter that parent, that one parent or two parents, and then you have to hope that those two parents are on the same page in that household. So that's already the odds are stacked against. And then on top of all the negative promotion from social media, when I say negative, it'll be somebody having the best time of their life and recording and reposting, right? It'll be somebody saying they're lit or they're doing something. It's the best time that's actually having for 30 seconds on the internet. And then you will have maybe on the news, what you just said, and it's not just you, it's all of us that barely watch regular TV anyway. And on the news, what you just showed the clip, it showed a highlight about fentanyl and the dangers it has in the community. But with the algorithms, you're able to dismiss what you don't want to see and what you do want to see. So if you see more people your age engaging in fun and extracurricular activities with the vape in hand, it's kind of hard as a parent to talk to these, young adults and young teens about the pros and cons of what's going on. So I say that's why it goes back to the community and the education piece. So, it has to be a full-on assault coming from every direction saying, from the teachers, from the parents, the community about the dangers of it, because it takes repetition. Because the one parent or best case scenario, two parents at home combating the negative innuendos about doing those type of activities, and forbid the parent may engage in maybe drink alcohol, and then now the kid, and we know kids today may be combative and say, well, you drink alcohol, that kills people every day, that puts damage to your liver and different things like that. So again, you just having so many things that you have to combat against nowadays. I think it's easier said than done. So you got to kind of take it off the parents and go back to that whole community style, and it takes a village type mindset.
So we're not going to get rid of it, right? I'm gonna yield to you, Sid, in a second. You're not going to get rid of hookahs. You're not going to get rid of. It's not going nowhere. So at this point, what we're left with is holding everybody accountable.
Right.
Because you're right. It's not just on one person. Everybody has to be involved. But we have like this, I'm going to mind my business attitude. Oh, you doing this? Hey, you ain't my child. Oh, you said this to this adult? Oh, no, I ain't got nothing to do with that. That's a problem. That's a big problem. Because, all right, you can hide it from your parents, but you shouldn't be able to hide it out in public. You can wear everything that you're supposed to wear when you leave out the door and change up when you get to school. That's not supposed to happen either. Somebody is supposed to call that out. Oh, you sneaking off campus? Oh, all right. Okay. I'm going to call your parents. Oh, I'm going to do this. We don't see enough of that anymore. It's like you're basically relinquishing all authority to a group of people who they don't understand life the way that adults understand life, right? So what do you do knowing that you can't get rid of something that's very profitable. Are you?
A couple things. One, to kind of go off what you were saying, awareness needs to be a really big aspect of this. Like parents, whether their kids are vaping or not, parents need to know who their kid is hanging out with, the type of friends that they have, what types of parents those the kids have, because you never know what type of environments these kids are growing up in. Not every kid is bad, but that doesn't mean that some of those habits won't be carried from home. There's all sorts of examples of parents whose kids died just because they touched a product that the parents were using. It wasn't even the children themselves. So it's important to know, like, if your child is going to somebody's house, do you know those parents? Do you know those kids? And if they're a safe place for your child to be at, for various reasons, not just drug use. But also parents need to educate themselves on what the signs are, what the signs of the drug use is, what an overdose looks like. And honestly, I think a lot of parents should have like Narcan in their home, just in case. I'm fairly certain drug center, like addiction centers and stuff like that, I think they give that away for free. So having that on hand, especially if you know your child is smoking in any capacity. But in general, if your child is vaping, you should have a serious talk with them, because even if they're not acquiring products that are laced with seriously deadly substances, it's still not good for them. If I know there's some that are like just the fruit flavor, there isn't even nicotine in it, even those chemicals can do lung damage to you. It can cause autoimmune issues because it is introducing stuff in your body and it's making it sensitive to allergens, pathogens, stuff like that. It really messes up with your lungs, and your lungs obviously affect everything else in your body. Not to mention, whether it's marijuana, nicotine, it absorbs much faster into the bloodstream when you breathe it in with a vape, because of the way that it's been, I forgot what the term is, but it's like tiny microparticles. So it's not like weed smoke where you're breathing in the incinerated version of it and the particles are much larger. That's why you can see the smoke. But when it's a vape, it's vaporized basically. It's tiny water soluble droplets, and so it gets absorbed into your lungs so much faster, so much easier. And that's why exposure to drugs of all types is vastly more effective and quicker acting when you vape it. And so it also stimulates addiction more readily than other products. They've found in recent research that kids who use vaping first are more likely to start taking other forms of drugs than kids who actually smoke cigarettes. And people who smoke cigarettes are more likely to decide to quit later than people who are vaping, because people perceive vaping as cleaner and healthier than cigarettes because there isn't that visual smoke. And it does more damage to the smaller, the alveoli, where basically the air goes in and it exchanges with your blood. Vaping does more damage because it's able to go deeper into those pockets of your lungs that smoke isn't as able to do. Because the problem with smoking, both marijuana and nicotine, is it coats your lungs, whereas the vaping goes straight into the tissues. So it's no matter the type of chemical you're inhaling, whether it's just fruit juice or nicotine, marijuana, or something worse, that is going to have a more immediate, more intense, and potentially more deadly effect than even traditional uses. So that's all to say. If parents find out their kids want to vape or are vaping or their friends are vaping, they should seriously just... Can I help you? Okay. They should seriously consider talk with their child to reconsider using those, and be honest with them with what could happen. And one of the things that's been effective just from research on approaching kids with addiction is linking it to current things that they're experiencing. This is in the case of kids that are actually vaping. If you point out to them, like, I've noticed you're coughing more often. Like, I've noticed that you haven't been able to do these activities that you usually do. You've been more tired or stuff like that. Sometimes connecting them with actual effects that they're already experiencing can help them recognize the damage they're kind of already doing. But yeah, in general, vaping should not be done by children. I don't understand how we're still allowing that in the community and how it's so widespread. I think it is that myth that it's not doing as much harm as smoke because we don't see it really. And I don't know. I just think it's really unfortunate that we have this general idea that it's okay for kids to vape because, well, at least they're not doing XYZ. Like, at least they're not doing these other hardcore drugs. And it's safer than cigarettes, where it's not. It's not safer than cigarettes. It's just as bad. They have these other stop vaping. They're like basically glorified straws, and then you put like scent packets in it. I see it advertised. I used to see it advertised on Instagram all the time, where you like suck it in, and it gives you the sensation that you're smoking or like vaping without it actually being like the chemical or anything like that. But the flavor packets, I looked into it because I was curious, and those have caused issues in people where it's triggered allergic reactions. It's triggered asthma. It's caused like lung issues. So even the stuff that they try and say, oh, it's natural, it's safe. If you're breathing in something other than air, it's probably not good for you, and you probably should stop doing that. So it's hard because it obviously in most places there's a ban, like you do have to be over 18 or over 21 to get a hold of these products, but that won't stop teenagers. They're gonna find a way if they really want to. And so that goes back to the awareness in the community, the teachers, the parents, the neighbors. People need to be paying attention to what these kids are doing. And as you said, not look the other way just because it's not their child. Because we are lifelines for kids nowadays. There's so many different dangers out there, and we need to start being more of a community and looking out for each other. I mean, with everything going on in the world, there's danger everywhere at this point. And we need to start actually being there for each other instead of having this like, oh, well, not in my backyard. I'm just going to be with my own family and they can deal with whatever. We need to start looking out for each other.
Yeah, we made too many things popular, accessible. The things that's supposed to be healthy for you is expensive. The things that's not good for you, you're making it more and more available, so to speak. And you're using specific platforms to promote and give this idea that, oh, it's fun, it's cool, Everybody is doing it. Join in further from the truth. It was something that I wanted to add on to this, and I lost it. Right now, we did a story already about fentanyl, and then I did another one. People thought I was joking about it, where they were putting it in candy, Halloween candy. People thought I was just making that up. How do you go about having these type of conversations? You can't just say, "Oh, look, you ain't gonna stop smoking weed, but look, this is what you need to look out for. People put this and this, and you need to understand or know, because they got 80 million different strands of marijuana out here. They got a million gazillion different flavors for these hookahs and all this other stuff. So how do you tell somebody that this is bad when everybody is essentially saying there's no harm? Where do you go from here? Like, we know what it does to people. We know it harms people. We know that it has a negative effect. But just like horrible impatient drivers, you're always going to run into a car accident going to work or coming home from work. You can't avoid it. People will always drive over the speed limit. People will always try to cut in front of you. You're always going to have an accident. It's unavoidable, because people, even though you know people have died a million times, you still put yourself in harm's way. So what do we do now? What's the solutions moving forward?
So I honestly, man, everything, you're trying to protect people from the world, and I don't think you can do that. It's really as simple as just educating. And if you put so much onus on the parents, and I think you are lacking and missing the portion of these kids are at a point where they're making decisions. And I think, again, it just goes back to being proactive versus reactive. It is, if you're starting when they're smoking vapes, then you've already failed. That's the reality of it. You know, rip the Band-Aid off. You did a shitty job if you're reacting at the point where your kid is now smoking and have addiction problems. You missed everything leading up to this point. So you're being reactive. So that's saying that you didn't have a relationship with your kid to begin with. Because having a relationship, you're watching the growth, right? You're involved. Hopefully, you're involved. If you're an involved parent, then you should, like you mentioned earlier, both of you should see these signs coming along. You see the signs when they start to like sports. You see the signs when they start to eat too much food and they're putting on too much weight. You see the signs when they're playing video games and not leaving out of their room, and they're pulling back from reacting socially. They're gravitating towards isolation. You see all these signs. So the question is, what did you do when the signs started happening? And if you didn't do anything, then now you're probably at the point where your kid's walking around smoking, sneaking and smoking, or just being disrespectful enough and just smoking out in the public because you probably didn't care about other things that built their confidence to disrespect you and do these things within your presence. So to act like such a worried parent and you're trying to figure it out, that means you might have missed all the signs leading up to it. That's the reality of it. I mean, because this just doesn't, it doesn't happen overnight. Everything is based off of patterns. So there was repetition that built up. You might not have saw it. There was, like you mentioned earlier, you know, you talk about being worried because of gateway drugs. If they're doing the drugs or they're searching for those other sources of dopamine and attention and gratification and those different things, they've been crying out for a while and you just missed it. And this is the device that they've come to grips with that helps them get through their tough times. And you're just not happy with the device, because the same thing happens every day. Kids either find a sport, they find a hobby, they find different things that gets their attention. And they might have got it from you. You might just been a bad parent and thought you were a better parent than what you were giving yourself credit for, because they might have adopted some of those habits from you, right? Just like as we were kids, we had older cousins, you know, not saying everybody, but somebody had an older cousin, somebody had older relatives, where somebody's house was where everybody got together, they drank, they watched sports, they had barbecues. Things happened that probably should not have happened, and the kids may or may not should have been exposed to it. Some people may relate to it as those are the good old days. Those are memories. And those are not, in fact, memories, great memories. Those might be traumas. And then you found a way to relate to it as you're growing older. And now that vice is being similar to being smoking, drinking, laughing. We call it the dozens, you know, talking shit about somebody. You know what I'm saying? Making yourself feel better, picking on people, whatever the case may be. They're all out there and they're all toxic. This one just maybe you're having a little bit of issues dealing with the fact that your kid chose that vice out of all the other vices, right? So you might have missed those signs leading up to it. And again, it goes back to everything that we talk about is accountability. So figuring out where you or the group of you went wrong, and just identifying a problem and just trying to have those conversations. And I think if you be honest and you use full transparency, I think it might be beneficial versus trying to find all these scientific methods of trying to figure out where you went wrong and, you know, how do you course correct with your kid, because that might be their vice of choice and they're watching you with your vice of choice, whether you have an eating habit and you're overweight, whether you're drinking and overweight, whether you work too much and you neglect things in the home front, which could lead to your kid hanging out with somebody else and finding those other vices. It's just so many different things. So you just have to be careful to not be so hard on yourself, because there's no guide or playbook on how to actually be a parent. And if you try to emulate the people that came before you too much, that might be also the problem. You might be overbearing, overprotective, might not provide room for growth. You might be an enabler. So many of those things can go back to just, you know, the simple question of asking yourself and then just taking a small look and seeing, okay, here's the situation, you know, where we could have pivoted left when we went right. So, you know, just have to be careful and trying to blame society and everybody else when the actual problem could be the person that's looking in the mirror. So there's so many different things. You identify the problem, and then you can, again, get together with people in your community and start talking about the loopholes, you know, as far as for the regulations surrounding vaping products. Why is it so loose? Why is it so stringent? Here in Texas, you know, at one point they're talking about legalizing THC. The next point they're talking about hemp. Then they're talking about deregulating it. You know what I mean? So it's so many things that's going on that goes into politics. It's bigger than us as parents, but we have to, again, it goes back to the communication piece. We got to make sure we're educating. We got to make sure the communication is open. It has to be fluid. It has to be able to go both ways. And again, sometimes you just have to take a look in the mirror, because sometimes it's something that's happening inside your own home and you don't even know it. You're looking everywhere else but in the mirror. It could be as simple as that. So not to overthink it, But not to overly simplify it and say it's not a big deal as well. But there's so many different ways and variations that you can go through it. But again, start with a community, and then you've identified the issue, hopefully, and then what are we doing as far as for the corrective course of action?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I had the mindset of like, you found your teen vaping, what do you do? But that is such an important point. One of my favorite quotes: an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, which basically is, prevention is the first response that you should have. It's not allowing your child to get to that point. A lot of kids will turn to drugs because they feel like it adds excitement to their life. It allows them to disassociate. It makes them feel part of the crowd. But a lot of these feelings stem from how they were raised as kids. If they feel like they're being ignored by their family, if they feel like their parents don't care about them, if they feel like their parents aren't there for them, they're more likely to turn to these methods. Kids that do not have a solid relationship with their parents are more likely to turn to their peers for advice, for peer pressure. Like, they're more likely to fall to peer pressure if they don't have a good relationship with their family. They're also, as I said in the chat, parents that are inattentive are always the ones that end up with the teen that gets pregnant, that they had no idea was actually sleeping around. They just thought they were going to a friend's house. It's the parents that are drunk that end up with the kids who drink underage, and they're like, what? I had no clue that they were stealing from my stash that I keep in the fridge all the time. That are like, wait, what? I had no idea they knew what it's always those parents that are not paying attention and live separate lives than their kids, expecting their kid is just gonna like, oh, well, they see me, so they're probably not gonna do that and whatnot. I'm like, kids act what they see. The way you act, the way you treat other people, the way you treat them, that is what they're going to be when they grow up. Kids live what they live. And if you are a parent that is not there for them, that treats them like they're a burden, that treats them like they're invisible, that treats them like they're annoying and shouldn't be in their lives, or that the parents would rather go off and do something else and just leave the kid at home, or there's all sorts of ways that parents can treat their kids that will make a child feel like they're worthless to those parents. And those are the kids that are most vulnerable to turning to illegal activities, harmful activities, or attention-seeking activities, including being promiscuous, including going out and doing crazy things with their friends. So you're absolutely right. This is not something that when your kid is 12 and 13 and you see the friends start smoking, that's when you approach it. Like, this should be something they grow up with, that they understand. Obviously, you shouldn't be like, you have a 5-year-old, like, this is called fentanyl. Like, can you repeat? No, you're not going to do that. But you have to at least forge a good relationship with them, have them understand right and wrong, understand consequences, understand accountability, understand that their actions will have repercussions. That way, when they're older, it won't come as a surprise, because oftentimes the sense of immortality also comes with a sense of entitlement, where you think like, oh yeah, I can have this and nothing will happen to me. And unfortunately, it comes in both ends of the spectrum, where you have some kids that are going to behave wildly and just do whatever because they don't care. They don't care how they hurt people. But then there's other people that are on the other end of the spectrum that grow up not caring that they can, or not believing that they can have an effect on people. And those are the types of kids that you'll see, like, they'll rob a store just because they're like, well, I wanted that expensive purse, or like they are driving super fast on the freeway and kill somebody and they're drunk and whatever, and they're just like, I don't care. Like I see that a lot with like the wealthier end of the spectrum. When they get in trouble, they're the ones that are kind of like, I don't care, do you know who I am? It's that, like, both of those parents, exactly, both of those are parents that were not involved in their child's lives and gave them a false understanding of what life was going to be like for them. And so to raise children that are less likely to die of drugs, to get pregnant young, to commit crimes, you have to be a parent to them. You have to be there for them. And that's not being a friend to them. There's a difference between being a parent and being a friend. But you have to show them how to live that life. Like, you cannot be the parent that is smoking and doing drugs in front of your kid and then wonder why they're following the same path as you. Granted, there are some exceptions where kids see what their parents are like and they're like, I'm not doing that at all. Like, I'm not doing that. But that's not always the case. And it's unfortunate because there are children's deaths that occur just because of the way the parents are living. And so for any parent, if you want your child to live a good life, you have to live a good example of that life. You have to live it and be it for your child to understand it.
So in layman's terms, you better get rid of your own vices. All them addictions and things that you've been holding on to your entire adulthood, and you just refuse to let it go. Yeah.
Yes, I agree, right? But at the same time, you got to be careful because so for 2025, you have, because we mentioned smoking weed and stuff like that. So again, this is why it goes back to communication, because right now in the medical realm, some of these things that were frowned upon are now being prescribed, right? So you got to be careful because you say that, but a parent could, cancer, PTSD, and I'm not gonna go too far, but just to say those two, you could be prescribed medical marijuana. So therefore, you could be smoking that in the presence, in your comforts of your own home, and your kids could see that. But it's about the communication and the education piece. You can't dismiss everything and say that because you do things. I think it goes without the lack of education. I'm not doing this to get so high out of my mind that I don't know what's going on. But this soothes me because I have this condition, and therefore I'm prescribed this, and this is why I'm engaged in these activities. Versus I'm just sitting here, I got a quarter pound of weed, and we about to just get high for the weekend. You know what I mean? There's a difference, right? Because even in workplaces, places that didn't always honor that, they had to because it's prescribed, and then So there is a different outlook on those type of things. So I think again, it goes back to the education piece, and it's something that's constant. It can't be something that's done once every 5 years, every 4 years, every 6 years, because as they're constantly around outside individuals learning and going through everyday life activities, because life's right, life be life. So, but you can't be the parent or the guardian or whomever that doesn't evolve with the times. So that's also important as well. You have to evolve and understand that they're learning at a higher clip than we ever did. So that means you need to continuously stay learning, continuous education. You need to continuously do that. And I think that's also what happens, and some parents get left behind, is they don't want to stay in tune with what's going on in the world, but they'll focus on keeping up with the Joneses, which is crazy. You know what I mean? They won't do the things to try to stay in tune with their kids, but they'll do the things to try to stay in tune with their neighbors. And they have a bunch of other people that have no actual impact on their well-being or their household. So again, it goes back to that mindset, and then just being able to communicate, and then relatability, being able to relate to what's going on. So, you know, again, it starts and ends with communication and transparency.
Just to add on to that too, be transparent about your mistakes. If you did have an issue with alcohol or drugs or something like that, be upfront with your kid about it too, because hiding your past from your kid is just as bad as like ignorance is bliss type of with your own kid. Because oftentimes that will come back to bite you. The kid will be like, well, but you did XYZ. So you have to be upfront with your child as well, so they understand that you have lived life too. You're not just some like blank page that has no experience whatsoever and has no idea. And just like what you said, you have to stay learning. You have to be educated, understand what's out there, what the kids are doing. I know a lot of parents have the like, oh, kids these days, I don't know, who knows what those kids are doing and blah, blah, blah. I don't know what any of these trends are. You should know what the trends are. You should know what the things are that they're talking about, what they're doing, how they're talking, what the code names are. They use all sorts of different terminology for different drugs and stuff like that. Like, you should know how the kids are talking and what types of things are circulating on the internet just as much as they know, because that's one of the ways that you can best help them is just by understanding the world that they're actually in. Because we always forget, like as you age, people forget that we're kind of in our own bubble, and people who don't recognize that they're in their own bubble will stay in that bubble. Because they, like me at 20 is not the same as what kids in their 20s now are experiencing. Like, the way I was in middle school is not the same way that schools were and kids are now in middle school. And to like that fallacy thinking like, oh, well, it's the same as it always has been, is dangerous, because you're not going to understand the transition that has occurred in the time that it took you to grow up to the point that you're at now. So it is important to not live in the past, not think that, oh, everything has stayed the same. I'm the same. The kids of when I was that age are going to be the same as I was at that age. You have to stay up with the times for your kids' sake. And don't be afraid to ask through them too. Like, don't just think that they don't know anything. Like, have conversations and ask them what they've seen. Ask them what their friends are saying, what they're learning and whatnot. Because I'm sure like a lot of kids would be more than happy to talk about the things that they see, and to show that interest in them and in their lives and what they're learning also allows them to respect you too, because it shows that you care about them and you're willing to learn about them. I've had this experience with my mom herself. She's like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Kids these days, like, she just didn't want to hear about it. She just didn't care. She just thought that, that's not true, and blah, blah, like, she'd have all sorts of reasons to blow off what I was saying, which will shut the kid out. So you have to be willing to have a two-sided conversation, not just talk at your kid, but allow them to talk back at you and tell you the things that they are also seeing and the things that they know, and not just discount, well, you're just young, you don't know what you're talking about.
No, well said. Well said. The one thing is, as a parent, you have to be coachable, right? You have to be able to enable. You're the first line of defense for your kids, so you have to enable them to be able to talk to you honestly, truthfully, and without fear of reprisal, respectfully. But you have to teach them those type of things in the house, because once they leave the house, how do you expect them to talk to anyone else with a sense of confidence? How do you expect them to be able to roll their shoulders back, poke their chest out, chin up, head up, and be able to say things with conviction if you're downplaying those things in the house? So you're absolutely correct. You got to be able to empower. It starts there. You're the first line of defense in building up those, future young adults into this world. So well said.
I do have to say this. This just happened. I heard my kid downstairs and he was going, and I was like, because of this conversation, I'm like, what is happening right now? So I go downstairs and I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, hiccups. Of course. He's all
Good
that
job, Mom.
paranoid.
All right. So my last train of thought. First of all, I concur with both of you. This isn't a race; it's a marathon. One, I don't want to stop learning. I want to continue to evolve as long as permitted. One thing I do have a pushback on is this notion that everything is changing. Yeah, we have advancements, but if history is shown, we are repeating the same cycle over and over and over again. Ecclesiastes speaks about it. Everything under the sun is repetition. Wisdom, charity, greed, gluttony, vexation, all of it is just recycled over and over and over again. The only differences between then and now is we're smarter and we're creating and building things beyond what we imagined all that time ago. What I've noticed in some adults, I don't want to generalize it because I know there's a small group of people compared to a larger group. I don't really know the numbers, but there are adults who cosplay as teenagers to this day. They still act like they in high school. Like, look at social media. You can scroll literally, and you remember Price is Right when you just flick the what's the name, and you can just do that, and it's going to land on something.
Right. Come on down.
Exactly. And you'll see somebody arguing or, oh, you this and you. Come on. Y'all 40, 50, 60 years old still act like, come on, man. But I do agree with what y'all said, especially if you're a grandparent or a parent or uncle or something like that. You absolutely need to know how to continue to connect with your siblings and your loved ones in general, just because it's like, all right, you keep your values and your traditions and you continue to refine them. So you're still applying your methodology, but you're doing it in a way that still is able to connect with them. How many times have you heard somebody say, oh, back in my days, or back in my days, this? Yeah. Well, it's 2025. This ain't then. And I'm gonna say this part, and if y'all want to say anything before we close out, cool. But how can I word this? That's probably going to be a longer discussion. Is what is happening today actually working compared to what we were applying back then? You want to merge the two, but I think at some point you have to figure out how to extrapolate from this era and that era, and then make it work to where you're not taking pieces from the other side, that's not conducive to anything. I yield the mic.
Yeah, you definitely have to merge the styles. And as I kind of said at the beginning too, you have to approach your teen or child in the way that you know them. Because obviously each kid is going to be different and there are going to be different ways to appeal to different kids. But again, that still boils down to, you have to know your kid. You have to be there for your kid. You have to understand who they are, be there for them, and create a life that's both transparent and understandable, but also structured and safe. So it really starts from the very beginning. It starts with how you treat them as a baby, as a toddler, as a elementary school student, as a middle school teacher, as you say, Coach. Like, if you have a teenager that's vaping, you already failed. You already did something wrong, and it's time for repair. But if you're in the situation where you do find out that your child is using substances, it's important that right now you have a conversation with them and you start to establish, one, the danger that they're putting themselves into, and also start working with them to understand how to say no, how to start rejecting these vices, because that's one of the hardest things for kids, is that they feel like they can't say no. They feel like if they do say no, there's going to be worse repercussions than if they do say no. I hope I said that right. Kids feel that the rejection from their peers is going to be the worst consequence than if they were to just say no and not risk the bodily impacts of these types of drugs. So you, regardless of whether they've started or not, make sure they understand that no is a very, very powerful statement, and you should stick to it, and not tempt fate. You should not be trying these things. Also, just because I know this is going to show up in the algorithm, for anybody that is struggling with mental health or substance abuse, the SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, is a fantastic place to start to look for resources. They can help connect you with treatment. They can help. They have a 988 suicide crisis lifeline. So if you're in immediate danger, you can also contact them. They also have treatment referral programs, and they can help with people who are struggling with addiction or struggling with a mental health crisis to find the services that can help them. And know that if you are struggling with a vice disorder, an addiction disorder, it's not your fault. Addictions can be incredibly potent, and it can feel like an uphill battle to even attempt to get over these things, and it might feel like you can't live without it, but I promise that there is a way out of it, and there are people out there that are willing to help you, and so you shouldn't be ashamed to seek help if you do need the help. And for parents out there, be there for your kids from the very beginning. Be a teacher, be a positive influence, and be honest with them. Hiding your kids from everything is just as bad as letting them do whatever they want, because lack of exposure will make the world all the more enticing to them. So it's your job to be realistic with them and show them how the world really is. That way they can adequately prepare themselves to be an adult, and to make the right choices when they're old enough to start making choices on their own. So yeah, be there for your kids, and be there for your community, your neighbors, your kids' friends, stuff like that. Like, even if it's not your own kid and it's your kid's friend and they're doing something, don't be afraid to reach out to them too. Don't be afraid to talk to the parents. Don't be afraid to help others who are experiencing the same thing.
So what I'll say is to wrap it up is to the parents out there, contact a subject matter expert and start a dialogue. Initiate the conversation. Because if you're at the point right now, you probably need some help. And you probably don't have total control of the situation. And this is probably the best time to get an outside resource and maybe get some feedback versus further the problem that you already have. Because if you were in control and you had a good hold on things, you probably wouldn't be in the situation that you're in right now. So I would say reach out to somebody, establish some checks and balances, ask them questions. Because again, there's no playbook on how to be a parent, but you can always find an accountability partner to flow some ideas across. Hey, I tried this, I tried that. Maybe ask some questions. Because what happens is a lot of times people are embarrassed of their situations and they try to take care of everything in the house and then it gets worse. And so instead of identifying a problem and getting help, they see the problem and they continue to go down the rabbit hole thinking they can do it all themselves. So I would just say, ask the question and try to get some help, try to get some intervention before it gets too late and out of control. There's nothing wrong with that because you can always take that feedback or you can always take that advice and you can either use it or not. But the more tools you have and the more resources you have in the toolbox, the better equipped you'll be to able to handle that problem and problem solve. And that's one of the biggest issues we have in the community is not enough problem solving skills, but we got a ton of excuses on why something has happened and on why something didn't work out. And we try to push through and muscle through versus asking those questions. And that's the problem. You try to do too much. You can't muscle through and force your way through everything. Sometimes you got to raise your hand and just say, I need help. And it's just that simple. Appreciate you guys, man. It's been awesome. Thanks for having me. Take it away, sir.
Yeah, I pretty much said it. Awesome show. Salutes to everybody in the building. Appreciate y'all for hanging out. I hope you got something out of tonight's conversation. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., the open mic returns. We back. And if I don't get to see y'all, enjoy your weekend. Shout outs to Miss Campbell in the building. Shout out to Custom. Shout out to everybody who tapped in with us and shared some of their feedback. We always love the feedback. Always love the feedback.
Arcana as well.
Arcana as well. Salutes to Arcana. Well, look, we about to get up out of here, man. You already know the energy. Do me a solid before you go. Hold on a minute.
What's the goddamn button?
Peace.
Guys, don't do drugs.